Picture this. The year is 1923, and you are standing in the sweltering heat of Cairo, Egypt.
Oh, setting the scene right away. I love it.
Yeah, you have to really visualize it. It is the dead of night, specifically 1:55 in the morning. And inside this lavish room at the opulent Continental Hotel, a wealthy British lord is actively dying.
It's a pretty grim picture.
It really is. He's lying in this sweat-soaked bed, just absolutely gasping for breath as a severe, totally unexplained fever ravages his entire body.
Right.
So he takes his final ragged breath, and in the exact fraction of a second that his heart stops beating, the entire city of Cairo is plunged into total darkness.
Just a complete blackout.
Exactly. The city's power grid simply fails. A complete, terrifying blackout.
It is an incredibly cinematic moment. I mean, if you put that in a movie script, people would say it's way too heavy-handed.
Oh, for sure. They'd say it's totally unbelievable.
Yeah, it sounds like the opening scene of a Gothic horror film. But the bizarre timing of this story, it doesn't stop in that hotel room either.
Not even close. Because at that very same moment, thousands of miles away across the ocean in England, this lord's pet dog suddenly starts howling in pure agony.
Wow.
Yeah, the dog lets out this piercing shriek in the middle of the night and then just drops dead on the floor.
It's just wild.
But the catalyst for all of this, the thing that started it all, happened months earlier. This British lord, Lord Carnarvon, had just breached a sealed 3,000-year-old tomb in the remote Egyptian desert.
Right, the excavation.
And carved right outside that tomb was supposedly this terrifying ancient warning. It read, "Death shall come on swift wings to whoever disturbs the peace of the pharaoh."
A warning that, well, over the next several years would seemingly come true for dozens of people.
Welcome to today's deep dive. We have a massive stack of historical documents, medical journals, and archaeological records sitting right here. And our mission today is to pull it all apart.
Lots to get through today.
Definitely. We are going to uncover the actual truth behind one of history's most terrifying legends, the curse of the pharaoh. Okay, let's unpack this.
I am really looking forward to this analysis because, you know, we aren't just going to look at what happened out there in that desert.
Right, there's way more to it.
Exactly. The real value here is examining why this specific myth completely took over the globe. We have to strip away that whole supernatural veneer to understand the real human psychology, the biology, and, honestly, the media landscape operating underneath it all.
So true. And I want you, the listener, to really imagine being alive in this era. It's the early 1920s. Magic, modern science, and the explosive growth of early mass media are all just colliding in this spectacular way.
It was a crazy time.
It really was. So step back in time with us, because before we can understand the curse itself, we really have to understand the unprecedented discovery that triggered the whole thing and, you know, the unlikely guy who pulled it off.
Right, you're talking about Howard Carter.
Yep, Howard Carter.
And to understand the magnitude of this discovery, you really have to understand that Carter was the furthest thing from the establishment.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, we usually picture 1920s archaeologists as these elite, wealthy, cigar-smoking academics from Oxford.
Yeah, guys in tweed suits.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But Carter was this sickly kid who never even received a formal education. His father was an animal painter who literally made a living drawing the pets of British aristocrats.
Which is just such a funny detail.
Yeah.
Carter essentially inherited his dad's paintbrush and this really sharp eye for detail. And it was only because a wealthy lord liked his watercolors that Carter was shipped off to Egypt at the age of 17 to help trace ancient art.
He was an absolute underdog.
The ultimate underdog. Yet, by November of 1922, he was sweating in the desolate Valley of the Kings, searching for a ghost. For 15 years, Carter had been hunting for a pharaoh whose name had been almost completely erased from history.
A name we all know now.
Exactly, Tutankhamun.
But Carter's time had pretty much run out. He was being funded by our tragic figure from the intro, Lord Carnarvon. And Carnarvon had dumped a massive fortune into this hunt. We're talking nearly 500,000 pounds in their money, which translates to roughly 35 million US dollars today.
$35 million. Just think about that. It's like a modern tech startup, right? Archaeology back then was highly speculative.
Oh, totally.
You need massive upfront capital to fund the digging, the workers, the logistics. And if you don't produce a unicorn discovery to show your investors, your funding just gets cut off.
Yep, the well runs dry.
Carter has burnt through $35 million of venture capital funding, essentially. He has zero results to show for it. So Carnarvon finally gives him an ultimatum. He says, "This is the final season. No more funding, no more chances.
The pressure on Carter must have been absolute agony. I mean, he's staring down bankruptcy and the total end of his career.
Yeah, it's do or die.
But then, the timeline of the discovery unfolds incredibly fast. On the morning of November 4th, Carter arrives at the dig site and finds his workers eerily silent. They had cleared away some sand and found a single step cut into the solid bedrock.
Just a single step. But by the afternoon of the next day, November 5th, a whole stairway emerges.
Wow.
And at the bottom of those stairs is a sealed door bearing the royal seal of Anubis, the ancient Egyptian jackal god of the afterlife.
Which confirmed it was a royal tomb. But you really have to remember the context of the Valley of the Kings here.
Right, it wasn't virgin territory.
Not at all. Nearly 60 tombs had already been found in that valley by 1922, and almost all of them had been picked clean by grave robbers thousands of years ago. So finding a door is a great moment, but finding an intact, unrobbed tomb is a completely different proposition.
It's the Holy Grail, so they spend weeks painstakingly clearing the rubble. Finally, on November 24th, they hit the 16th step and see the name Tutankhamun inscribed on the door.
Okay, getting closer.
Then, 2 days later, November 26th, this is the iconic moment of the 20th century. Carter makes a tiny hole in the sealed door. He inserts a candle. The hot air from inside escapes, flickering the flame.
I can just picture it.
Carnarvon is standing right behind him, practically shaking with anticipation, and he asks, "Can you see anything?"
And Carter just whispers, "Wonderful, wonderful."
It gives me chills, because inside was a literal time capsule. Over 5,000 untouched, pristine objects.
Unbelievable.
They find a 10-kilogram solid gold death mask, a solid gold coffin, a dagger that was forged from meteorite iron, literally a weapon made from space rock.
That is so cool.
And then amid all this unimaginable wealth, Carter logs something strange. He finds 130 seemingly mundane walking sticks. Why would a supposedly omnipotent god king need 100 walking sticks in the afterlife?
See, that specific detail is the key to unraveling the entire myth later on.
Oh, we are definitely coming back to that.
Yes, because everything in that room was exactly where it had been placed 3 millennia ago. It remains the greatest archaeological discovery in human history.
It really does. But as the news of this monumental triumph spread, the awe almost immediately shifted to terror.
Right.
How did a scientific discovery turn into a horror story so quickly?
Well, it started locally. The Egyptian workers excavating the site were already deeply on edge about disturbing a royal grave.
Understandably.
Right. And just days after the tomb was opened, a royal cobra slithers into Howard Carter's house and eats his pet canary whole.
Oh, wow.
Now, to a Westerner, that's just an unfortunate wildlife encounter. But to the local workers, you have to understand the specific symbolism.
Right. The cultural context.
Exactly. The cobra is the ultimate symbol of Egyptian royalty. It's the very animal worn on the crown of the pharaoh to strike down his enemies. So they saw it as the pharaoh's guardian spirit, taking revenge on the bird of the man who disturbed his rest.
That is super creepy. And from there, the real disaster strikes. Lord Carnarvon's death timeline is just a perfect storm of bad luck and, well, the realities of 1920s medicine.
Oh, absolutely.
March 6th, he gets bitten on the cheek by a mosquito. The next day, he's shaving and accidentally slices the bite open with his razor.
And in the sweltering heat of an Egyptian dig site, an open wound is incredibly dangerous.
So dangerous.
It gets infected. And then the infection is severely aggravated when a local fly lands directly on the open sore.
Ugh, gross.
Yeah. Fever sets in quickly. His doctors tell him to rest and absolutely stop drinking alcohol to let his immune system fight. But Carnarvon completely ignores them. He just keeps opening bottles of wine sent over from his private estate.
Not the smartest move. And on April 5th, 1923, his body gives out in that Cairo hotel room.
What's fascinating here is how the media functioned during this period. We think of algorithmic echo chambers as a modern internet problem, but 1920s newspapers operated on the exact same principles.
Really? Like engagement farming?
Totally. They were locked in fierce competition for daily circulation. They needed to farm engagement. So they took this unfortunate, highly explainable medical event and actively molded it into a cemented global narrative of supernatural revenge.
Which is how a novelist gets involved. 12 days before Carnarvon even died, Marie Corelli, who wrote popular fiction, published a dire warning in the Daily Express. She claimed she had this rare Arabic text stating anyone entering a sealed tomb would face terrible punishment.
Talk about timing.
I know. So you have a fiction writer warning of a curse, and less than 2 weeks later, the billionaire who funded the tomb actually drops dead.
The media frenzy went entirely off the rails. They didn't fact-check. They just printed the most sensational angle possible to outsell the rival paper on the street corner.
Just chasing the clicks, or, well, the 1920s equivalent.
Exactly. Once reports of the Cairo blackout and the howling dog hit the front pages, the legend became untouchable. Even Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, a highly respected intellectual, publicly suggested an ancient eagle elemental caused the illness.
When the guy who literally invented Sherlock Holmes, the world's most logical detective, is telling you it's a magic ghost, you know the hysteria has completely overridden public reason.
Oh, definitely.
And the papers will start keeping a scoreboard. Over the next 6 years, 22 people associated with the excavation died.
The collateral damage was staggering. George J. Gould, an American financier, visited the tomb and died of a fever the very next day.
Wow.
Joel Wolfe, a British industrialist, visited and also died of a high fever shortly after.
Sir Archibald Douglas Reed, the radiologist who took the first x-rays of the mummy, dead from a mysterious illness.
Yep.
And the wildest one is Arthur Weigel. He was a correspondent for the Daily Mail, and he was actively generating these fake news stories, pushing the curse narrative to sell his articles.
A real instigator.
Exactly. And he ends up contracting a fever in Egypt and dies, literally becoming victim number 21 on the very list he helped invent.
It's unbelievable. The fear even drove people to suicide. Richard Bethel, Carnarvon's personal secretary, died of a blood clot in 1929.
Oh, this part is so sad.
It really is. His 78-year-old father, Lord Westbury, was so distraught by the news that he threw himself out of a 7-story window in London, firmly believing his family was cursed.
It's horrific, the real-world consequences of this myth. And right in the middle of all this panic, the media finds their ultimate smoking gun.
Oh, the autopsy.
Yes! In 1926, Dr. Douglas Derry performs an autopsy on the mummy of Tutankhamun himself. When he unwraps the face, he finds a small, round, healed lesion on the pharaoh's left cheek.
In the exact same spot where the mosquito had bitten Lord Carnarvon.
Are you serious? The mummy had the exact same wound. That is chilling.
It sounds it, doesn't it?
But if we are going to understand this supposed vengeful architect of the curse, we really have to look at the reality of who was actually in that sarcophagus.
Exactly. We need to transition away from the terrifying myth of the pharaoh and look at the actual tragic reality of the boy.
Let's do it.
Tutankhamun was born in 1329 BC into absolute chaos. His father, the heretic Pharaoh Akhenaten, had essentially ruined the Egyptian empire.
Right. Akhenaten tried to upend thousands of years of deep-rooted tradition.
He was radical.
Totally. He banned all the old gods except for one, the sun disk, Aten. He fired the powerful priests, closed ancient temples, and forced the entire capital city to move to the middle of the desert. It completely destabilized their economy and culture.
It was a monumental disaster. So when Akhenaten finally dies, the country is in shambles, the priests are furious, and they put an 8- or 9-year-old child on the throne to try and fix it.
A literal kid.
Yeah. He was originally named Tutankhamun, meaning the living image of Aten, his father's sun god. But the priest quickly forced him to change his name to Tutankhamun, signaling a return to the old ways and the traditional god, Amun.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because the 1920s media was imagining this terrifying, all-powerful god-king waiting to strike from beyond the grave. But the physical reality was the exact opposite.
Completely the opposite. When scientists finally x-rayed his skull in 1968, they found a dark spot at the base. For a long time, historians theorized he was murdered by a vicious blow to the head. But modern scans revealed a physical condition that was far worse. It all comes down to the royal practice of inbreeding.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. To keep the royal bloodline pure, pharaohs frequently married their half-sisters or immediate relatives.
Which is never a good idea.
No, mathematically terrible.
Yeah.
When you do that generation after generation, you aren't just passing down power, you are literally compressing the gene pool, magnifying genetic defects.
And what did that do to Tutankhamun?
It left his body completely ravaged. He had Kohler's disease, which is a rare condition where the blood supply to the bones of the foot is cut off, causing the bone tissue to die and collapse. He also had a severe clubfoot, and he was suffering from multiple strains of malaria.
Wow.
He wasn't an omnipotent sorcerer. He was a highly compromised, frail teenager whose body was constantly failing him due to intense genetic and physical stressors. He died when he was only 18 or 19 years old.
Oh, wow. So that explains the walking sticks. The 130 walking sticks Carter found in the tomb weren't some ceremonial staff of power. The kid literally couldn't walk without assistance.
Precisely. And the great irony of his life is that he was considered so unimportant, such a fragile puppet of the priests, that the rulers who came after him systematically scrubbed his name from the official records.
They just deleted him.
Yep, they chiseled his name off monuments. They wanted him entirely forgotten. But that deliberate erasure is the exact mechanism that allowed his tomb to survive.
Because the grave robbers, centuries later, couldn't rob a king they didn't even know existed.
Right.
His insignificance was his ultimate shield. But wait, if he wasn't a powerful sorcerer, and the supernatural curse is a myth, how do we explain the very real pile of bodies? What actually killed these people?
Well, that requires an autopsy of the curse itself. Let's systematically dismantle the terror with science and historical fact. We have to start with that famous, chilling warning carved on the tomb. Death shall come on swift wings.
I have to admit that quote is incredibly intimidating.
It would be, if it were real. It was completely fabricated.
Wait, hold on. You're telling me the most famous part of the curse, the literal inscription that started the panic, never existed at all?
Not at all.
How did a totally fake quote become global historical fact?
Because the excavation team let it happen. Decades later, the tomb's security chief, a man named Richard Adamson, straight up confessed to the whole thing.
No way.
Yeah. He said that when aggressive journalists asked the team about a curse, the archaeologists just smiled and didn't deny it. They liked that it kept the superstitious locals away from the gold.
That is brilliant, but also terrible.
Right. So the reporters, needing to file a daily story, just invented quotes about cursed clay tablets to sell more papers.
That is unbelievable. So the foundation of the curse is literally 1920s clickbait.
Entirely. And the scientific community knew it early on. In 1933, Professor Steindorf investigated every single death linked to the tomb. He concluded there was zero mystical or direct biological connection to the excavation for the vast majority of the victims.
But there is a very real biological twist to some of these deaths, right? What about the fevers?
Yes, the biology is fascinating. In 1963, a scientist named Dr. Ezzedine Taha discovered that many museum workers and archaeologists in Egypt were suffering from severe respiratory issues. He traced it to a specific fungus called Aspergillus niger.
And this fungus can just survive inside a sealed, dark tomb for 3,000 years.
Yes. It thrives in decaying organic matter, like the food offerings left for the pharaoh. When a tomb is unsealed and the stagnant air is disturbed, the mold spores become airborne.
And people breathe it in.
Exactly. If inhaled, Aspergillus niger causes severe respiratory inflammation and bleeding in the lungs. If you lived in the 1920s before antibiotics were discovered, inhaling 3,000 years of concentrated lung irritants could easily trigger an immune response that leads to a fatal fever.
Though you have to admit, the universe has a very dark sense of humor, because right after Dr. Taha gave a massive press conference proving it was just a fungus, totally debunking the supernatural curse,
I know where this is going.
he died in a car crash on the way home.
The coincidences really do stack up, which is why the myth survived for so long. But statistically, there is no curse. A massive 2002 study published in the British Medical Journal proved this beautifully.
What did they find?
Researchers tracked 44 Westerners who were present in Egypt during the critical years of the discovery.
Let's do the math on that. Out of the 44 people, 25 actually went physically inside the tomb and 19 didn't.
Right. This raises the ultimate scientific question. Did the people who were exposed to the inside of the tomb die younger than those who stayed outside?
And the answer?
The answer is a definitive no. There was no statistically significant difference in their lifespans. The average age of death for the cursed group who entered the tomb was 73 years old.
73. In the early 20th century, that was actually higher than the life expectancy for their social class.
Yeah, they did great.
Tutankhamun wasn't cursing them. Statistically, he was helping them live longer.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it highlights exactly how human brains operate. We are biologically hardwired to find patterns in chaos, a psychological phenomenon called pareidolia.
Pareidolia.
We connect dots even when they're totally random because it makes us feel safe to understand the why behind a tragedy.
Think about how we operate today. You spill your coffee in the morning, you hit every red light on the way to work, and then your laptop crashes during a meeting. What do you say? I'm cursed.
Exactly.
Your brain is taking completely random, unrelated data points and forcing them into a cohesive narrative. That's exactly what the public did with the Cairo blackout and the dog dying.
Precisely. Those events had logical explanations. Power cuts in 1920s Cairo weren't supernatural. The grid was notoriously unreliable and failed almost every single night.
Okay, sure. But what about the dog howling in London?
Carnarvon died at 1:5 a.m. Cairo time. Because of the time zones, that is roughly midnight in London. The dog died at 4 a.m. London time.
Ah, so not simultaneous.
The newspapers reported them as simultaneous, but these events were actually 4 hours apart. And regarding Carnarvon's health, we have to remember he wasn't a robust, healthy man struck down in his prime.
Right, he was already sick.
He moved to Egypt in the first place because he was chronically ill and his lungs couldn't survive the damp British winters. An infected razornick in an era before penicillin was very often a death sentence for someone with an already compromised immune system.
Okay, but you still have to explain the mummy's cheek lesion. How do you explain the pharaoh having the exact same wound as Carnarvon?
More fake news.
Are you kidding me?
Nope. That specific detail was exclusively reported by a newspaper called the Morning Post. Why them? Because their massive rival paper, The Times, had secured a lucrative exclusive deal with Howard Carter for all official coverage of the tomb.
Oh, I see where this is going.
The Morning Post was larked out and losing money, so they literally manufactured the cheek lesion story out of pure spite to compete for readership.
That is wild. The media was literally creating the monster they were pretending to report on. So what does this all mean? If we look at the ultimate proof, the curse completely falls apart when you look at who it supposedly missed.
Exactly. If a magical supernatural trap existed, it should absolutely target the primary violators, the people who actually breached the sacred spaces.
Right, the first one's in.
But look at the historical record. Lady Evelyn, Carnarvon's own daughter, was one of the very first people to step inside that tomb. She lived to be 78.
Wow. And Dr. Douglas Derry, the medical professional who literally took a scalpel and cut open the pharaoh's mummy for the autopsy, he lived until he was 87.
And then there was Howard Carter himself, the man who orchestrated the entire excavation, the man who physically yanked the pharaoh out of the sand. He lived for another 16 years after opening the tomb, eventually dying of entirely natural causes at age 64.
I love how Carter handled the press later in his life, because for decades, reporters and terrified tourists would come up to him in a panic, asking about the curse, and he just had this incredibly dry, forward response. He would just look at them dead in the eye and say, "I am still alive."
It really is the ultimate airtight rebuttal. What can you even say to that?
Wow, yeah, you just have to laugh at that. It's such a mic drop. You have decades of sensationalist journalism, people jumping out of windows in London, novelists writing ancient warnings, and Carter's just like, "I am still alive."
He completely refused to engage with the hysteria. He knew exactly what he had found, and he knew it was a triumph of human endurance and meticulous science, not magic.
Which brings our journey beautifully full circle. In ancient Egyptian culture, there was this core foundational belief that a person only truly dies when their name is no longer spoken.
Yes, uttering a person's name, remembering them, was the mechanism that gave them eternal life in the world beyond.
And that is the ultimate beautiful irony of this whole saga. Tutankhamun's successors hated his family's chaotic legacy so much that they tried to murder him a second time by erasing his name from history.
And for 3,000 years, they succeeded. He was a ghost beneath the sand.
But because a stubborn, sickly painter's son refused to give up and brushed away that final layer of sand, this frail 18-year-old kid was given a second life.
He is now, without a doubt, the most famous pharaoh in human history. By the ancient Egyptian definition, Howard Carter gave him true immortality.
His name will never be forgotten again.
Never.
Which leaves you with something to really think about. We live in an era right now where people are absolutely terrified of being canceled or erased from the public record. We obsess over our digital footprint, our personal brands, and our legacy.
Everyone wants to be remembered.
But looking at the Boy King, you kind of have to wonder, is there a chance that being erased, being entirely forgotten and buried by your own contemporaries, might be the only true way to become immortal to the future? Death didn't come on swift wings to that hotel room in Cairo. Immortality did.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the desert.
Keep exploring, keep questioning the sensational stories you hear, and we'll catch you on the next one.